Welcome to the Dare to Multiply podcast. On this podcast, we help passionate Jesus followers become courageous, obedient disciples who impact their communities for the kingdom of God. I'm your host, Cynthia Anderson, a disciple multiplication coach and trainer. We have some amazing guests coming up, people who are taking risks to launch new discipleship movements in their areas. I can't wait to learn from them and introduce you to their ministries. Together, we'll show you how to make and multiply disciples and groups in your area. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any tools or content coming your way. I also wanted to mention a free newsletter on disciple making that I send out every single week. It's called Daring Disciples, and it's all about how to share your faith, overcome obstacles we all face in the journey toward multiplication. To subscribe to that, go to daretomultiply.com/newsletter. Let's dare to multiply. Isolation has grown dramatically in our society, and COVID made it even worse. Western culture was already individualistic and isolated, but COVID made people stay at home, work at home, order their groceries at home, do things from home, and isolation is on the rise, and with it, an increase in anxiety, depression, all of these things. We know this is a problem in our society, but it's also a bit of a problem for multiplying disciples. How do we multiply disciples along natural relational lines if people don't have them, right? People don't have an oikos. How are we going to approach that? Well, today I'm talking about this with Tim Walker. He is someone who works with the Timothy Initiative in the United States. He's been grappling with these issues and thinking them through, and you are in for a real treat as we hear Tim's story. He's at it. He's in the field making these applications, working to build oikos in an isolated, lonely context where people don't have those natural relationship circles as many do in Africa and Asia. So we're going to have Tim give us some answers, some suggestions as to how we can move forward in this today. And we'll be right back with that in just a moment. Are you busy but not seeing the fruit you long for? Dissatisfied with your present level of impact on those around you? Or frustrated with traditional methods of discipleship that don't seem to be effective? If so, the Getting Started in Disciple Making Movements course may be just what you need. Inside the Getting Started program, you'll get access to a step-by-step proven approach to making and multiplying disciples. Not only will you receive 25 short and practical video teachings spread out over 6 modules, but you'll have a chance to connect with others for group coaching via our monthly Zoom calls. And even more importantly, you'll become part of a global community of like-minded people from all over the world who are passionately committed to following Jesus and impacting others around them. If you want to get unstuck and begin moving forward as a disciple who makes disciples, I encourage you to go to courses.dmmsfrontiermissions.com and sign up for this powerful program today. And now to today's episode. It's great to have you, Tim. Thank you for coming on the Dare to Multiply podcast and on this show to share your insights. And I got a chance to talk to Tim by phone or Zoom a little while ago. And I was like, wow, this is a guy who's out there doing it, somebody who's putting things into practice, experimenting, doing the hard work of disciple making in an environment that maybe it's not highly persecuted. That's not what makes it hard, but there's some hard things about the environment in which you've been applying these disciple making principles. And you're overcoming obstacles, trying new things. So I'm super excited to have you here on the podcast. And thank you for taking time to reschedule with me. I messed up. So sorry. But we have rescheduled and we are here. And I'm so glad that we have this chance to talk today, Tim. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. Well, I want you to start by just telling us a little bit about your journey. A lot of people don't know you. I didn't know you. I'm still learning who you are, but tell us a little bit about your journey and this whole thing of not just adding disciples or doing things in a so called traditional way, but really going after multiplication, daring to multiply disciples in your context.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Detroit, Michigan. Moved out to the Northeast in 2008 to attend college.
Northeast of the United States, right?
Yeah,
We're talking
Northeast
about
United
America here.
States. Yep, in
Okay.
Pennsylvania. So I'm in the northeast corner of Pennsylvania in a city called Wilkes-Barre. So if you're a fan of the show The Office, I live just south of Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And after I arrived here as a college student, my introduction to the city of Wilkes-Barre came working with the homeless community, working with people trapped in addiction, mentoring fatherless teenagers in the community, and really
Mm,
just sensed that that was a gospel gap in this community. People would
mm,
often express that they didn't really feel like there was a community that they felt like they belonged to. There were nice
mm,
people that would help them in a transactional way.
mm,
But they often felt like, hey, there's an us versus them divide. We're their charity project, not one of them. And so God really just started breaking my heart for the city of Wilkes-Barre, especially for the least reached portions of our city, the most broken parts of our city, people in the midst of such deep brokenness. I started looking at even some of the demographics here. I found that Wilkes-Barre is actually the 12th most post-Christian area in America. And so it's only about 3% reached with the gospel. And so, knowing that 97% of people don't yet know Jesus, I wanted to move here and make an impact in that. So, I teamed up with
that's
my best friend in
awesome.
college, and in 2012, moved to the city of Wilkes-Barre. And we kind of went the traditional prevailing model legacy church approach at that time. But really, our heartbeat from day one was to plant a church of and for the poor. And so we had the privilege to be able to do that. It started right in our living room, kind of multiplied out from there, started gathering those multiplied groups together in some larger context as well. And in so many ways, we saw God move miraculously.
Wow.
Our church is primarily filled with first generation Christians that
Mm,
Jesus radically rescued out of addiction, prostitution, gangs, prison, homelessness, atheism, Satanism, and everything else in between. And
wow,
so
that's
it was
amazing. Praise
so
God.
amazing just to see how God was moving. So as we continued on in the journey in our first 8 years, we saw around 130 people reached with the gospel, baptized. We had made a commitment that we will personally disciple every new believer that we lead to Christ, and we worked really hard at that. Our mission from day one for our church was multiplying followers of Jesus. So we had this multiplication DNA. Our vision was for gospel saturation, giving every man, woman, and child repeated opportunities to see, hear, and respond to the gospel. And so we had that multiplication DNA, we had that gospel saturation vision. But after about 8 years, we started to look at just trying to humbly and honestly evaluate the journey that God had us on. And when we got brutally honest, we said, hey, you know what? We've seen a lot of rapid addition, but we've seen very little actual multiplication. Because how many of the people that we've reached, baptized, personally discipled have ever gone on and done that with anybody else? And before we blame them, I think we actually have to take responsibility and say, it's not that they're not doing it, it's that we've not led and equipped them for it. So that was
Mm.
about a month before the COVID-19 pandemic hit here in the United States and around the world. And so February of 2020
Hang on,
started.
let me
Yeah,
just pause
yeah,
you there a
yeah,
sec
yeah,
to you're, like, rushing through a story, which is
yeah,
so
yeah,
amazing. I wanna
yeah.
unpack it just a little bit
Sure,
as we go through,
sure.
if you'll allow me to interrupt you, because 'cause you've said
Happy
some
to.
really important things that I wanna make sure our audience catches,
Yeah.
and, I'm excited to hear the rest of the story, and I know they are too, but, you said some things that a lot of people don't do. Like,
Hmm.
for a lot of people, you had seen incredible fruit. You talked about a gospel gap that you identified, that there are people who are homeless, people who are coming out of drug addictions, who just don't fit in other church communities. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like it's theirs. So you address that gap, which, kudos to you. Well done. You also talked about a place in America that's post-Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people who may be listening to this in Africa or Asia, or may not even realize that there are places in the United States that are no longer Christian, post-Christian. They maybe
Mhm.
used to have churches that were thriving, but that was 100 years ago, and now they are post-Christian, and only 3% reach. That's pretty amazing. So you identified an unreached area, an unreached type of people, really, and then you saw a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Lives transformed, and I mean, all of us who are listening to that are like, "Yay! We're celebrating with you." And yet,
Yeah.
there was something in you that wasn't content when you actually started evaluating, because you were aiming at multiplication
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people would just be happy with the 130 changed lives.
Yeah.
These guys are now following Jesus, but you're saying, no, we feel the Great Commission calls us to see multiplication. And you said you saw rapid addition, not rapid multiplication. Before we move
Mhm.
further, just can you tell us a little bit more about that? What does that mean exactly? Just go a little bit deeper on that, if you would.
Yeah.
Rapid
Absolutely.
addition versus rapid multiplication.
Yeah. So I would say really what we saw is not just how much fruit was being produced, but where and how that fruit was being
Okay.
produced. What we really found was that the majority of people led to Christ in those seasons were led to Christ by a pastor like me in our church,
Mm,
or a program within our church. And while I was grateful for the fruit that produced, what we really saw was, hey, we're reaching people with the good news of the gospel, but we're not equipping people to take the gospel into their everyday environments.
and why was
And
that important to you? Like,
yeah, I think so much of it is really, I mean, rooted in the Great Commission. The Great Commission was not given organizationally to churches, it was given individually to disciples. And so I think at times one of our weaknesses in America and some of our traditional prevailing models is we focus so much on organizational fruit that's produced by leaders and ministries, and that fruit should be celebrated. But
amen.
while that is good and godly, grateful for that, I think it's incomplete. I think it falls short of the vision that Jesus had for his people and for his church. And so, it really what it came down to was looking at changing the scorecard. Okay, so we're adding people to Christ, we're adding people to the church, but those that are being reached aren't then going on to reach other people.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it was questions like, how many people are sharing the gospel or hearing the gospel apart from our pastors or our programs? Well,
Mm.
that produces a different, that's a different scorecard. That's a
Hmm.
different reality. And so addition was really focused on growth in one singular location primarily. If people weren't entering our building or encountering our programs, they weren't necessarily encountering the message of Jesus. And that's a massive problem,
Mm.
according to the Great Commission. And so while there's addition that was happening because of fruit through singular location, primarily through singular programs, there wasn't multiplication where fruit was being produced amongst us, but fruit wasn't being produced beyond us. And that was
It was
a that was
being
a that was a
Fruit was
big
being
paradigm shift.
produced
Yeah, fruit was being
amongst us,
yeah,
but
fruit
not
was being produced amongst us, but fruit was not being produced beyond us. And I would say
right.
that
And that
that's
was
the
your
big
bar.
difference between addition and multiplication. Addition is more
Right.
singular in a particular location, and addition really stops at the person that is reached.
Mm.
Multiplication then goes on to see people who have been reached and discipled reach and disciple more people who reach and disciple more people as well.
Awesome. Well, sorry for the interruption, but it
Oh,
was
that's
well
great.
worth it.
Yeah.
Those are such key things. So then what changed? As you did this evaluation, you realized and recognized this. What happened next?
Yeah. So for us, it was really a question of how do we take what God has entrusted to us. I didn't feel like God was calling me to leave, go somewhere else, or start something new. Nor did I feel like God was calling us to throw a grenade in, the legacy church that we had. So it was, how do we best shepherd people that God has brought to us, but how do we shepherd them toward a different future where they
Mm,
take personal ownership and responsibility for the Great Commission in their everyday lives. And so it
mm,
really became a significant change in what we invest in and what we consider success to be. So
mm,
there was a moment in that, like right before COVID, where certain metrics would tell us we were highly successful. We had around 250 people coming out on a Sunday morning. We had 90% of those people connected in a community group during the week. We had
wow.
75% of those people serving. And people were saying, wow, you guys are wildly successful. But at the time, I just felt like something's missing. And then as I started to press
Mm,
into this and I started to understand more of, disciple making church planting movement, as I started to encounter that and hear from leaders who were on the front lines of that, but that's why I moved to Wilkes-Barre in the first place. That's what my heart longs for. That's the vision that God's given us for our city. But we've gone a different route, and I think that there's a way to reroute us towards something that's more faithful to the Great Commission in the lives of our people. So
amazing.
we got involved with a group called the Timothy Initiative. They had seen invested in disciple making church planting movement around the globe, and around that time, those that were in the United States said, "Hey, we've supported internationally." Movements that are happening. We really have a heart to see movements happening domestically, right here in the United States. So I jumped in early on with a group of leaders who were starting to dream about movement here in the United States. Had some really incredible leaders that mentored me, poured into me, and we began training our people to live as disciple makers. So for us, we said
Wow.
we are now defining success as we want to equip people with the beliefs, skills, and values to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches to the fourth generation. Whereas
Mm,
historically, we had repeatedly hit a ceiling of first generation disciples. We had reached people,
mm,
but those people weren't going on to multiply and reach others. We wanted to take ownership of training them, equipping them, not through knowledge based content, but through obedience based discipleship, where we were
mm,
helping them to move forward to be able to live out the Great Commission in their everyday lives. So we've been on that journey for about 4.5 years, and I'm so grateful to see a stark contrast between what was and what now is. Because while in past seasons the majority of people were led to Christ by a pastor like me or by a program of our church, now we don't have to wonder or worry. Is the gospel being shared outside of our ministries? Yes, it is, because the majority of people now
wow.
being led to Christ are being led to Christ by everyday people in everyday environments as they're taking the gospel into all of the places that they live, work, study, shop, and play.
Wow, that's beautiful. And yeah, amazing. I'm sure there are people listening who are pastors or are involved in a legacy church and they're like, how do we make that kind of shift? What does that even look like? And is it even possible
Mm,
to equip the saints for the work of the ministry?
yeah.
We talk about it, we read the scripture, but how do you get there? And how do we get there in a place like America? We and I'm part of it. We're leading movements, coaching people in Africa and Asia. I recently am moving back to the United States, and yes, how do we do it here? And it must be done here too.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of people who say, well, I'm not sure it works in a Western context, but I so appreciate, and that's part of why I wanted to have you on here. It is happening. It's going to happen more, but we have to go after it and not just be content with addition growth, even when it's celebrated as success
Mhm.
by those around us. And it's worth celebrating,
Yeah.
but God has more. So appreciate you coming on and sharing your story about that. And the Timothy Initiative, you now serve in a role there. Let me just put that up on the screen for those who would like to check it out. Tell us just really briefly a little bit more about TTI.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to my role here at Restored Church and in the city of Wilkes-Barre, I also serve on the USA National Leadership Team for the Timothy Initiative, where I'm part of a small group of people that are overseeing movement across the U.S., really trying to catalyze movements in all kinds of places with all kinds of people who want to see disciple making, church planting movements right in their local context and geography. So, it's really great because not only do I get to invest in movements happening elsewhere, but I find that cross pollination with other movement thinkers and leaders and mentors and practitioners really sharpens me as well. Really, what I've said that our approach to gospel saturation has been honed with a strategy where we're pursuing planting a microchurch on every one of the 679 blocks in our city. And so I'm
Wow.
grateful for the Timothy Initiative, their investment in me, and the opportunity that I have to reinvest in other leaders who are just starting on this movement journey and all that God has
Yeah.
called them into as well.
That's awesome. And it demonstrates a principle that I so believe in is you do not need to be an expert to train somebody else or to lead someone else. You just need to be a couple steps ahead of them.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a movement of 70,000 under your belt or whatever, before you can start to train others. So appreciate that you are just, some steps ahead, and I encourage you guys to go check out the Timothy Initiative and get in touch with Tim, especially if you're based in the US and would like some more input. But the title that we have for this podcast, which we're just getting to almost 20 minutes in, but you have such an interesting story, is Building Oikos Relationships in an Increasingly Isolated Culture. And there are some things that are unique about Western doing disciple multiplication in a Western context because of the isolation. And yet, it's not only in the West that we see this. I think all of our global cities, this is definitely on the rise. So it's not only a Western issue. But first, let's talk about what does oikos mean? As we talk about building oikos, just tell us briefly what do we mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So oikos would be the word for household, and it's important for us as modern readers to understand that a household wasn't necessarily just like a single nuclear family. A household often included multiple generations or other people who worked alongside of a
Mm,
family, maybe an extended relational network. So oftentimes the way that we talk about it with our people is who's in your circle of relationships, your
mm.
family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your classmates, people like that. And so oikos would really be a circle of relationships or a network of relationships.
Yeah, awesome. And it seems like in many cultures, this is kind of just natural. They're community oriented. They are tighter with their family networks than we find, particularly in Caucasians in the West. You've got tighter networks, tighter relationships happening, and more natural oikos, you might say. But here in the West, and particularly when I talked to you, you talked about COVID and the impact of COVID on our relationships and the increase of isolation is well documented. But talk about that a little bit. What did COVID do to us, and how, which groups are maybe the most isolated?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say globally, one of the things that I appreciate about other cultures and other places is community-oriented cultures tend to be more interdependent, where they're interdependent on each other, where more individualistic cultures,
Mm,
prevalently seen in the Western world, but also elsewhere, are more independent. And so I think that there was already a idolatry of independence in the Western
mm,
world prior to COVID. And then COVID really amplified that because there was a season in which isolation was required and the unknowns of what is this, what's happening, certain mandates and lockdowns and certain things that I think one of the things that COVID did is COVID not only amplified but it normalized and incentivized isolation. So you
mm,
see many of the Western world was very individualistic, but there were still more communal settings. I think that's changed a lot post COVID. So people don't go to work in an office building. They now have a desk in their bedroom that they work remotely from. Many people canceled their gym memberships and they bought Pelotons. Other people no longer grocery shop. They now use delivery services, or they use food prep services. People don't go out for entertainment. They now stream it. And I think we're starting to see more and more. I don't think we have enough data or history to understand the long term effects, but I think we're starting to
mm,
see glimpses of it as we see mental health decline, as we see social anxiety rise, as we see increasing tribalism. I think that we see that proximity breeds empathy, distance breeds suspicion. And I think
mm,
we see that even in some of the ideological tribalism that even influences greater isolation. And then I think because that relational fabric has broken down, it has also eroded longevity and loyalty. So
mm,
people are much more transient. It's easier to uproot when you never dug deep roots in the first place.
mm,
And so there is kind of like this revolving door of relationships and conversations and people, and especially in a high trauma community like ours, we often find this is a place people move from, not a place they move to. And you
mm,
also find the ways that crisis points actually um, destroy relationships. When
mm,
somebody relapses, they overdose, they're reincarcerated. They get in legal trouble. There's a restraining order, certain things. So it makes all of those relationships. We believe that the gospel flows best through relational streams and networks, but it appears as if the fabric of relational streams and networks has changed. It's not
mm, mm,
evaporated, it's not gone, but it is
mm,
different that I think requires one, a greater spirit dependence to be able to
mm,
be, led by and empowered by the spirit. We really need that wisdom from above. God,
mm, mm. So
what do
good.
we do? We don't know what we don't know, but we trust
Mm,
you and we're following your lead. So please
mm,
lead us to people of peace that can open connections. Lead us to be faithful with the
mm,
people that you've placed in front of us for however long we have. We can't
mm.
presume longevity or loyalty, even, but we can be faithful in the right here, right now, with who's right in front of us.
So good. Well, I think, Tim, you've defined the problem so well. That I liked that phrase that COVID not only normalized, but incentivized isolation. It made it convenient, even more convenient for us to be isolated, even more comfortable. And of course, as humans, we tend towards that, right? We're going to go with what's easy. If I can wear my sweatpants and work, why should I get dressed, or whatever?
Hmm.
If I can do
Hmm.
it from the
Hmm.
office at home, why should I go into an office when I have to drive half an hour through traffic or whatever it is? So,
Yeah.
yeah, and the implications on our society are very telling. And a lot of people are talking about that. But today, we're especially talking about the impact on disciple making, that it does make it, in a way, harder to build those friendships or yeah, your networks have gotten smaller. I find that even in my own life. It's not that I don't have them, but they've gotten smaller and they've changed due to COVID. And I'm sure some who are listening are finding that as well. So, what do we do about it? Let's talk about the solution for the last 10 minutes or so that we have. What are some of the solutions that you guys have been experimenting with, trying? I know when we talked the other day, you were sharing about something fairly new that you're experimenting with. But if you've got your people out there and most of your new disciples are coming through people that aren't you, tell us about what they're doing as well. And yeah, what's this all look like? What are some of the solutions?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when you look at the breakdown of social fabric, it's easy to focus on the negative. But I think for us, where others see obstacles, we see opportunities.
Mm,
So I think that, yes, there's a growing loneliness epidemic, which means
hmm.
that there's a greater hunger for
Yep.
relationships. And so I think this is the opportunity where the people of God have the opportunity to rise up, and to demonstrate unity in the midst of division, to offer relationships to those in the midst of isolation and loneliness and so many things. And so I think a lot of it is really about establishing presence. It's
Hmm.
about being present with people, and being able to make those connections. To For us not to sit back in isolation, for us not to sit back passively waiting for people and opportunities to come to us, but to go with them, or to go
Mm,
to them, and to go
mm,
with them, even as we're training and mobilizing our disciple makers, to not send them out alone, but to really go with them into the harvest with an abundance mindset, to be able to say,
mm,
hey, like Paul, we believe that there are many more in this city who are the Lord's. And so,
mm,
with that abundance mindset, with that belief that God is already at work in people and places, we just need to search and find where he's already at work and be eager and ready to join him there. I think a lot of
amen.
it for us has just been a renewed focus on people of peace, to be
Mm,
able to look for, okay, who are receptive people, who open doors into a new network of people, and they're willing to gather their people in their place, and we're able to partner with them in pursuit of that. So one of the things right now we're doing is we are prayer walking and mapping every one of the 679 blocks in our city,
mm,
where
mm,
we're being faithful in our own relational networks as well, but we're also searching for where are the other places and who are the other people whom the Spirit is already at work, and how do we go to them? How do we, find where God is at work, and how do we, fill even more of those geographic or demographic gospel gaps in our community,
mm.
to go and to see and meet needs in the name of Jesus, and to build
Can I just
relationships there.
ask a quick question about that, Tim? So, is that you who are going and doing the mapping? Is that people from your church or your team? Who's doing that prayer walking and mapping?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So we've got about 24 people that are
Mhm.
actively engaged in that pursuit with us, where they have
Okay.
been already trained as disciple makers. They've instilled this in their life as a lifestyle, and we are going out in pairs and doing that together. Kind of going neighborhood by neighborhood. So we've picked a particular neighborhood that would encapsulate about 90 blocks
Mm.
for the start of it. Like you said, we just started this recently. And
Right,
so,
yeah.
yeah, so we are prayer walking and mapping each of those to be able to really discover what's there, where's God at work, and we're eager
Yeah.
to join him there.
I love that, and I wanted to ask that question because I wanted to find out if it was still the paid employees who are out there doing this, or you've been able to mobilize 24 of your disciple makers who are out there, and they see it as their responsibility to go out and prayer walk and look for the persons of peace. And Yeah. And you also are going. You've gotten out of the building as a pastor and you're out there among the people. And that's a big shift. I mean, a lot of
Mhm.
pastors spend all their time in the building, and you're
Yeah.
out there doing that. That's so good. Yeah. So, um, anything further you want to say about that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
strategy?
Y
And yeah.
yeah, so I think the other thing that, that we've tried to do is we've tried to go, okay, so we're rescuing people. Well, we're not rescuing. Jesus is rescuing. We're partnering with him in that. We are
Good
seeing
distinction.
Jesus rescue a lot of people out of a lot of really traumatic and unsafe like environments and even
Mm,
relational networks. And so I think one of the things that we have tried to do is to guard against the temptation to extract people out of that
mm,
and really kind of assimilate them into our environment. Hey, I'll reach you in your context, and then I'll pull you into mine. What we're really
mm,
trying to do is we're trying to steward that well. Where I would say you do have to be really careful in the proximity and the of that, but we're trying to say, okay, hey, if you came out of a gang or you came out of addiction or you and your cellmates were just released or some of that, what does it look like to ensure that you're not just leaving those people in the dust in this newfound relationship you have with Jesus? What does it look like for us to be intentional about crafting safe environments to go with you into them, but to create relationships and opportunities for you to now be able to share your story with people who are where you were,
mm,
with those people, and to watch people go back to their dealer, to watch people go back to their former cellmates, to watch people go back to some of those people with a true compassionate Christ-like heart and
mm,
say like, hey, in my flesh I want to hate you and abandon you, but that's not who Jesus has made me to be. I'm a new person, and so I forgive you and I love you and I want to invite you into this journey with me,
mm.
to follow Jesus. One of one
That's
of our
so good.
guys, one of our guys, a decade ago, he was a homeless meth dealer sleeping in abandoned cars in the junkyard. Had a
Okay.
radical encounter with Jesus, gave his life to
Mm,
Christ. He's been trained as a disciple maker, and just earlier this year, he got to baptize a friend of his, and it was so cool to be able to celebrate. Hey, you guys used to run the streets together. Now you follow Jesus together, and to watch him
wow.
continue, just to invest in relationships like that has been so cool. And then overall, just trying to help each person identify what are the unique strengths, abilities, passions, burdens that God has given to you, and how can you leverage each and every one of those, to create opportunities and conversations and relationships in which you can disciple people to and through conversion to Christ and see
Mm.
them be raised up as disciple makers.
I love that. And um, yeah, I think we even talked about that when we talked previously about how everybody has something that could be a bridge for them to build a relationship. Some people, maybe it's their love of music. Some people, it's they love to work out in the gym. Maybe it's they have a dog that, they take for a walk. I know for me, that's been a big one. People don't necessarily like to talk to you on the street in an American context without some suspicion. Some will, but a lot of people are a little like, who are you? Why, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
But if you have a dog and you're friendly with their dog, things open up, So
Mm-hmm.
what is in your hand that is, or in who you are as a person is something that we talked about the other day. And just
Yeah.
I want to explore that more in my
Yeah.
neighborhood and in who I am. And some people love to cook, and they love to barbecue or grill, and they stick their grill out on the street, and while they're barbecuing, people come by and they offer them a burger or whatever, their recipe for whatever they're doing. But there are ways. I am
Yeah.
absolutely convinced there are ways in our American, Western, European cultures that God has already put within us that are bridges to be relational, even if you're an introvert. And that would be me, stick my nose in a book and I'm
Same here.
happy.
Yeah.
But Jesus commanded
I
us to make disciples. That means you got to get out there and build friendships and get to know people.
Absolutely. The final quick thing I'll share is I think a paradigm shift that has helped our people is we've kind of said, hey, really opportunities happen on three levels. Level one is you see it. Like once you become a disciple maker, once you're trained, you start to see all kinds of things that you never saw. And so seeing
Mm,
it, having an awareness for it, that's level one.
mm,
That's growth.
mm,
Level
mm,
two is to seize it. When
mm,
somebody starts the conversation with you, when somebody expresses a need or a desire or an opportunity, and then you respond to what they said. But
mm,
I think really what we've tried to lead people to is the third level, to not just see opportunities, to not just passively wait for them to come to you and then seize them, but to shape opportunities. So
mm,
we're trying to help people look at who are the people around you? What has God entrusted to you? And how can you use that to shape opportunities? So
mm,
don't wait and see if your brother brings up the conversation. Hey, what happened? Well, he
mm,
didn't bring anything up, so we didn't talk about anything. No, shape the opportunity. Walk in praying for it, pray specifically for it, and know what are you doing to be able to shape that opportunity in the environment, who you take with you, your intentionality in the conversation, the presence that you have, all of those things to say, hey, it's great to see it. It's great to seize it. It's best to shape it. That you are proactively living in obedience to Jesus, looking to share whatever he has done in your life with others in a really intentional, relational, conversational way. Watching people start to do that and watching them take baby steps and longer strides in that direction, it really has changed their lifestyle and their posture for really how they live for the kingdom each and every day, which I'm really grateful for.
mm. That is so good. Those three levels. And you, as a listener, you may be still at I'm barely seeing it. To me, it just looks like there's no opportunities. Lord, just give me eyes to see it, but then not to get stuck there, and boy, I've been there. I don't know about you, Tim, but I've been there where it's like, I saw it, I missed it.
Mhm.
And then I beat
And I
myself
always,
up,
well, I
like,
always encourage
why
people
didn't I
don't,
step in?
yeah, don't beat yourself up. Seeing it is growth.
Mhm,
Because before you were committed to or trained in disciple making, you didn't even see it. You now see
mhm.
it. That awareness is a gift from God.
It
And
is,
so
and
whether
it's
you're
a big
seeing it,
step
you're seizing
forward.
it, or you're shaping it, all of that is a pursuit of growth. And that's a real gift from the Spirit.
Yeah, that's right. So good. Well, I'm sure there's more that you could share, but if you're interested to learn more from Tim, I encourage you guys go ahead and go to ttionline.org and get in touch with him, hear more. Tim, do you guys have some training opportunities, things, anything else you'd like to share about as far as resources that people can make use of?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're welcome to check out the TTI website, see what we're doing in training disciple making, church planting, movement leaders. Feel free to reach out to me directly. You can email me, tim@restoredchurch.org. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to hop on a call, have a conversation. I love connecting with like-minded leaders in that way. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X. Feel free to look me up on any of those. Shoot me a message, connect, and I'm just really grateful that all of us get to play a small part in a much larger movement of God that's happening all around the world as we walk in obedience to the Great Commission.
That's awesome. Well, I do encourage you take advantage of the things that Tim's offering and that to the Timothy Initiative, great organization. Run into them a lot, not in the US, but so this is great to get to meet you here, but mostly overseas and really wonderful to have you. Any last words of encouragement for those who are maybe just starting out or some who've maybe been trying to multiply disciples in a Western context in particular for a long time? What would you say that encourage them? All of this has
Yeah,
been encouraging, but last word.
yeah. I feel like I've been most encouraged by reading through the Gospels lately. Two things that stuck out to me. Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. But right after that, then he sends the disciples out looking for people of peace. Where they find them, dig in. Where they don't, keep moving and keep searching. And so the harvest is plentiful, but it isn't
Mm,
plentiful everywhere. So if you haven't yet found it, keep knocking, keep asking, keep seeking, keep searching, and be ready to join God there. In a lot of ways, sometimes as a pursuit of movement, we can feel like the disciples in John 21. We've been out all night fishing and we haven't caught anything, and that's exhausting and exasperating. But Jesus shows up and says, throw your net on the other side of the boat. They obey, and they
mm,
catch an abundance of fish. And so my prayer, my heart lately has been, I'm called to be a fisher of men, called to lead others to be fishers of men. And my biggest desire is I just want to fish in waters that Jesus is stirring. And I'm going to keep
mm.
searching for that, praying in dependence on the Spirit in pursuit of that. And I want to give the rest of my life to that. However long it takes, whatever ups and downs, twists and turns along the way, it's totally worth it because Jesus is worth it.
Amen. He is. He is. And, for those working in the West, I think you're not alone. It's in Africa and Asia. I have friends who are also facing the same sense of when are we going to see that other side of the boat experience. And it's common to a lot of people who are out there fishing, but don't quit fishing and don't quit listening to his voice because he will lead us to the right people. And if we don't grow weary, we will reap a harvest in due season. So encouraging. And thanks once again. And we'll be right back. I'll be right back in a few minutes with some key takeaways and an action step for you to take this week. God bless.
Are you ready to unlock your potential as a disciple maker? Then it is time to dive deeper into the principles that are changing lives with the Multipliers Mindset course. This transformative course accompanies the book The Multipliers Mindset, Thinking Differently About Discipleship by Cynthia Anderson. These lessons will help you not just through reading about a multiplying movement, but how to actively live out a lifestyle that leads towards movements. And here's the best part. It comes with a practical workbook, which is designed to take your learning even further. This workbook guides you step by step to apply what you learn and to impact the lives of lost people around you. With easy-to-follow steps, uplifting lessons, and timeless truths from the book, this course equips you to make disciples and to start groups that multiply. Visit multipliersmindset.com to step further into the work God is calling you to do. Let's multiply together.
Wow, Tim gave us some amazing insights. And let me go quickly through some of my takeaways. Identify the gospel gap. Where are the least reached people, or what group of people? And I'd never heard it really talked about this way. What group of people don't naturally fit in the already existing church? And then go after targeting them, go after working among them. He talked about how rapid addition isn't enough, that we need to pursue rapid multiplication, and talk more about what that meant. I loved how Tim talked about evaluate. Evaluate. Ask yourself the question, how many people who've come to Christ have been led to faith by someone on our staff or through our organization, our programs? And how many have come to the Lord through an ordinary believer in our church, or an ordinary person who's sharing their faith and making disciples? Great question to ask as you evaluate. The Great Commission, he said, was given individually to people, not to organizations. And organizational fruit is to be celebrated. But he said it's incomplete. Jesus had so much more in mind in his vision for the church. I can't say enough of an amen to that. We need to measure not only fruit produced amongst us, but fruit produced beyond us, he said. Consider what you recognize as success, he said. Look again to the Great Commission. And are we recognizing things as success that are not actually the fullness of the Great Commission happening? Then we moved to the topic of oikos. He talked about how oikos is your circle of natural relationships and how the West suffers from, and I quote, an idolatry of independence, which was, and again, quoting from Tim, COVID not only normalized, but incentivized isolation. It eroded longevity and loyalty. So true. And so insightful and important for us as disciple makers in situations that are growing increasingly isolated to recognize this is a problem. And yet, this growing loneliness that we see around us is also a tremendous opportunity for us as the body of Christ to demonstrate something different, to offer relationships in the midst of this loneliness, to offer unity in the midst of so much division. Tim talked about how we need to build oikos by making connections, by being present to people, going with them into their relational networks, and going with them, even for people who are coming out of unsafe relationship networks. How can we go with them into them, or how can we change the environment a bit to make it more safe for them to stay connected to the people rather than extracting or pulling them out of those relationships in order to see them be able to reach those who are in those networks with the gospel. He talked about renewing our focus on finding persons of peace, those who would open up new relational networks for the gospel spread. He talked about gospel saturation and just getting abundant seed sowing out there happening. So many things that he highlighted. And then he talked about the 3 levels of connecting with the lost, that you see it is the first level, an awareness. You see that I could have connected or I could connect. The second one is you seize that opportunity, you seize it, you do something about it, you step into it. But the third, and this is where Tim said we need to get to, is we shape it. We take initiative to shape the conversation. We go in prepared in prayer. We go in ready to shape the conversation, to shape the opportunity to be something that will help us to build oikos and to connect with lost people. And then lastly, and I want to quote, I love this, that Tim said, I want to fish in the waters Jesus is stirring. I think we all can say amen to that. Lord Jesus, lead us to the waters that you're stirring. Let me be the one that fishes there where you're at work. I want to join you. I want to be with you in it. So here's your assignment, right? Your call to action today. Your action step is to take time to evaluate how much of the fruit in our ministry is coming through first generation efforts. In other words, the pastors, the staff, the professionals are the ones who are leading people to faith, or there's a program that was initiated by those pastors and leaders that provided the opportunity. How much of our fruit is coming from that? And how much of it is coming from ordinary people we've equipped who are out there in the marketplace? They're out there in their relational networks and they're leading others to faith. And that's a tough bar for many of us to embrace, but that's when we will see not just rapid addition growth, but rapid multiplication growth, which eventually will mean not just a few hundred coming to faith, but thousands and thousands of people putting their trust in Jesus. God bless you guys as you evaluate and ask those questions. May God be with you and give you a wonderful week ahead as you go and make disciples, daring to multiply, not just add them. Have a great week. That's all we've got for this episode of Dare to Multiply. One thing that would really help both us and other people who might like to listen in is for you to rate and review the podcast, if you haven't done that yet, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Feel free to message me with any topics, questions you'd like addressed, or guests you'd like me to interview. Until next week, then, please remember, no matter how ordinary you feel, God's dreams for us are always bigger than we can imagine. Let's dare to trust Him for a greater harvest.